Hello, everyone, and welcome into our latest live broadcast. Today it is Sunday, the 28th of June, 2026. I'm your host, CareyHolzman, and thank you guys for hanging out with me this Sunday. I see a bunch of people waiting for us here in the chat room, all our friendly faces and names that we recognize as our community. And we're always welcoming others into our community as long as you're a nice person. I mean, come on in and say hello. That's all you have to do, and then friendships blossom from there. A shout out to our friends over at VIP-URCDKEys. I just want to get this reminder that we have the discount available for all of our viewers if you want to buy a real license key for Windows or Office, an actual real one, at about 90% less than Microsoft sells them, up to 90% off, depending on what it is. These are the keys I use in my business. I mentioned before, most businesses will never, ever tell you where they get their products from. Why would they? You're basically asking them to tell you how they can go bypass you. That's not good for your business, to tell people how they can do it themselves and cut you out. But that's what I'm doing. I go to VIP-URCDKEys, and that's where I buy my keys for my clients. I got ripped off too many times buying keys online. I was buying from a legitimate seller in Canada, and I was paying 3 times more. And then half of the keys I was getting weren't working, and then it's a big hassle to get new keys because of the shipping delays. So this is all done electronically. And I spent the money and the time so you don't have to. So if you want to just be done with it once and for all you have to do, look underneath any of our videos, like this video here. Underneath the title is my name. Underneath my name, there's that first gray box there, and just click more. That's our video description. That's going to contain all the links for anything we discuss in the video. If it's a product review, etc. In there, you'll also find the direct links for Windows and Office from VIP-URCDKEys, and you don't have to use those links. You can manually go there and do it the hard way and search for it yourself, knock yourself out. But if you just want to go there directly, use the link. That's not a commission-based link. It doesn't matter to me. 3334 here in this example, and when you hit the Buy It Now button, it wants me to sign in. Your sign-in account is free, but it's absolutely necessary to securely send you your product key and your instructions, right? So once you sign in, then you can hit the Buy It Now, and then you'll see that price will change if we use the promotion code CAREY, C-A-R-E-Y. This is my gift to you. If you want to take advantage of it or turn it away, it's just a gift. That'll take 25% off the price. Hit the submit order button and then select how you want to pay for it. You're going to pay for it following whatever option you select there. Go through the standard screens that you're familiar with anytime you've ever ordered anything online. I shouldn't have to explain all that. It's no different than anything else. And within 2 minutes, generally speaking, on average, it's less than 2 minutes, you're going to get an email confirming the receipt of the purchase along with your product key and download link to the product if you need the product, and instructions on how to use it. If you're confused or if you have any problems, they have 24/7 support. And that 2-minute response is, in general, from my experience, it doesn't matter if it's day or night, weekend or holiday. It's pretty damn consistent, and the product just works. So in order for me to compete with the likes of Dell and HP and Lenovo, you know, they're buying literally tens of thousands of Windows and Office licenses. I don't have that sort of budget. So how do I get a competitive price when I'm not buying at that scale? That was my goal, was to find a solution that still kept my prices competitive in the market. And I have decided to be unlike anybody else and share that with you. The inside workings of my business, which you could also use if you wanted to start your own business. I've already solved it for you. It's already there for free. So if you're building computers and you want to sell them and you need Windows licenses or Office licenses, and your customers are like, hey, you charge too much, you got to consider where you're getting those licenses from. If you're buying from eBay, if you're buying from Etsy or any other place Windows licenses are sold, including Amazon, there's a lot of scammers. And once they take your money, they'll never give it back. So just bear that in mind if that's a risk you want to take, in the hopes that you get a real key that works just because it saves you a couple of dollars. And then you pass that off and sell it to a customer, and then their license stops working or they have a problem with it. That's on you. But If you want to do it the way the professional does it, I'm just telling you, that's how I do it, man. I got no secrets. So with that, let's see, what are we doing today? We have the AOOSTAR. This is the MACO. Oh my gosh, these glasses aren't going to cut it. I'm trying to read this little teeny tiny sticker, and it's, I'll tell you what, another birthday, and the fonts keep getting smaller. This is an AMD Pro 6850H that has 24 gigs of soldered on RAM, but no storage and no operating system. See, we're right back to the whole OS thing. And on part one of this, we opened it up. We showed you the insides. We installed an NVMe drive. We installed Windows 11. I reached out to the folks at AOOSTAR for their support, and I said on the Amazon listing, it said it came with a Windows key, but it didn't activate. At least I think it was this one. Anyway, AOOSTAR, I had a response within a few hours. They said, you know, normally they ask for a proof of purchase, but I just showed them the video. And they said, no problem, here's your product key. Basically what I said was, I don't know, I'm confused, you know, does it come with Windows or not? And they said, yeah, all you have to do is ask for it and provide proof of purchase. So I'm passing that on to you, that if you do buy from AOOSTAR, and you buy one of their bare bones units or something that's kind of midway bare bones where it's got the RAM but not the storage because the RAM is soldered on, if you simply ask them and provide proof of purchase, they will provide you your license key for free. So you don't even have to buy a license key. And AOOSTAR's support was excellent. I asked them a couple follow-up questions, and once again, within a few hours, every single time I got a response, and it was a very good, professionally written response with somebody who knows English, which is very... Look, in this business, we're dealing with a lot of Asian manufacturers, and sometimes the English language, well, it's foreign to many of them, and they do their best, but sometimes the messages are just muddy. I'm trying to make out what they're trying to say, and I hate to assume what they're trying to say. So sometimes we have to go back and forth, and it sucks if you're waiting 2 or 3 days for a response like we have with other manufacturers, or get no response at all. There are some manufacturers of mini PCs that have no support and basically no warranty. D-Link. But anyway, we're here to expose that, for better or for worse. And with AOOSTAR right now, they have taken the place of what was once, in my opinion, a great mini PC manufacturer called B-Link. I can't recommend B-Link anymore. They're not the same company there used to be. Their website doesn't work. Their support doesn't even know their own products. They don't even include all the right drivers. It's a mess. And then they deny it and say it's not true, even though I've shown it live on camera. They can't be bothered to watch the video. So I don't want to give them my business. I'm certainly not going to recommend that to one of my customers and have that reflect on me. So it's time to look for new players. And in doing so, we had some familiarity with AOOSTAR over the years. But I don't know, in my mind, I just kind of thought of them as if nothing else was available, kind of a thing. Not that they were bad, but they weren't really high up on my list. Well, times have changed. And given B-Link has now left their position open, I think AOOSTAR is in a perfect position to take over where B-Link was in that list. They have a variety of products to choose from. There's only one product they make I don't like, which is it's a really old, like 6-year-old Intel-based mini PC that we reviewed here. And I don't think it should be sold. I think at 6 years old, it's time to pull the plug, get them out of there. Or just sell them refurbished. You know, you're buying a 6-year-old computer that's brand new, that's ridiculous. But that's the one exception. Everything else AOOSTAR has made that we have reviewed here, and we paid for these. We spent our money on these. We spent your money, your membership money, your Amazon gift cards. We bought these on Amazon. AOOSTAR sent us nothing. They don't even know we're doing this. So for me to give it that recommendation, I want you to understand, again, I've got no secrets. This is all transparent. What's my motivation? My motivation is to find good value PCs in 2026, in June of 2026, almost July. And it's getting harder and harder to find. And some of those manufacturers that were up and coming, well, it's their time to shine right now. And this is a prime example of that. So if you're just looking for a very good value without paying a name brand tax, the fact that AOOSTAR can provide so much more than HP, Lenovo, or Dell can equivalently for so much less money makes you wonder what's going on over at HP and Dell and Lenovo. Their website, you know, they have their drivers, they have responsive support, they have a great warranty, although I haven't had to try exercising that warranty yet. I have no doubt, based on the communication and the experience with the company, that it's very professionally run. So with that, I'm looking forward to giving this kind of the part 2 of what we didn't have time to finish on the first part of the review. So on the first part of the review, we installed the NVMe drive, we installed Windows 11, we downloaded and installed all the drivers, and it's all documented live, unscripted, and unrehearsed if you want to go back and watch part 1. I think we ran out of time when it comes to the benchmarks. Now, for me, the benchmarks are less important as long as it runs somewhere within the window of this processor. Any computer that contains this processor should run Cinebench or any other applications, video games, about, you know, within plus or minus 6 or 7% of whatever benchmarks you can find online of any computer, laptop or mini PC that utilizes the AMD, what I say it was, 6850H. They're all the same. So unless something's drastically wrong with it, there's no issues of heat, there's no issues of one manufacturer being faster than another, because the benchmarks aren't going to be the same twice in a row. So if you run a series of benchmarks, try to think of a good way to explain this. If you have one watch, you know what time it is. But if there's a clock on the wall, a clock on your phone, and a watch on your hand, which one has the right time? I can almost guarantee you they will not all be synchronized together. Only one of them is right. So when you review or read reviews, whether it's a website or a YouTube video, the numbers they're getting from benchmarks are their experience, but they don't represent a solid number that you should expect to get the exact same number, but you should be within a couple percentage points above or below that. And that's normal. That's just how it works. Even if you bought the exact same unit, configured in the exact same way, and bought it on the same day, and you even ran it in the same studio as the person running the test, and you did your own test, you will get two different numbers, but they should be very close together. So it doesn't matter who makes the unit as far as this performance goes. The performance is dictated by the manufacturer of the CPU. Period. End of story. So since they're not making the CPUs, if they're using the same CPUs, they will all perform the same, or within a margin of error. It would be very negligible. So you don't have to worry about that stuff. What you do have to worry about is, am I getting a good price? Is it coming from a company that is going to respond to me if I have any problems, or are they going to ignore me? And overall, do you like it? Is it too loud? Is it too small? Too big? These are things you have to decide. I cannot decide. Nobody can decide that for you. You're going to have to make up your mind. But I will say, at least if you buy from Amazon, you can get it very, very quickly. I got this one, I think, in 2 days after I ordered it. And you have 30 days to return it for free for any reason and get a full 100% money back. So I don't understand why anybody would be buying anywhere else, but I have a business to run. And you know, you might buy one computer, for example, every couple of years. I buy multiple computers a month, and you know, I have stacks of them. As you can imagine, part of that inventory is got to be sold off so I can buy more product, but part of the inventory I hold on to because I need it for further review. There's some future plans for it, or it may be a product that aligns with my clientele. And my clientele are not gamers. My clientele are not enthusiasts. Generally speaking, my clientele are businesses. If I have a machine that's really good for business, which is usually the businesses that I have, they absolutely have flat out told me they don't want any AMD based computers, and they don't care what difference like if I tell them, look, you can't tell the difference between an AMD and an Intel computer, they say I don't care. Just do me a favor. This is what they tell me. Don't bring it up again. When we tell you we want a new computer, we want Intel. So with that in mind, and I don't put these words in their mouths. This is real conversation with real business owners. If I have a decent mid or upper range Intel based mini PC or even a desktop that I build, I set it aside as a future potential item to sell to my clients that I would stand behind and I would warranty it. Whether I built it myself or in this case AOOSTAR, I would stand behind this, but they won't buy it because it's AMD. They don't even want me to present it to them. So there's a number of factors and variables that determine what I can hold on to and what I sell. And the money, when I sell them, I lose money on them. I can't sell it for what it cost me because it's used now. And then I have to pay for shipping. I don't get free shipping like Amazon, so then I lose money there. And then whatever's left over after paying sales commissions, shipping, and then losing money on the actual price, I can put towards buying another one. But you can see that's not the business growing, that's the business shrinking. If there's more money going out than going in, it's more like a charity. But I'm doing my best, and I'm hoping things will turn around, hopefully by this time next year, but we'll wait and see. I mean, it could happen anytime, honestly. In the meantime, we keep marching forward. We're not shutting down just because AI companies are buying up everything. Let them buy. They'll run out of money. just got to wait them out. Attrition will always win. So thank you to all of you who are sticking with us. I know it's tight for everybody right now. It's not just me. It's not just content creators. It's every single one of us worldwide are dealing with this. And you just got to wait it out. It's just like having a cold. You may not feel well. You may have a fever. You may feel sick. You have to wait it out. Let it run its course. You will be stronger as a result. I promise you. All right? So we'll just try and keep a positive attitude and make the best of it. A shout out to our good friend Buster watching us from Edinburgh, Scotland, who, as always, sends an Amazon gift card prior to the show in lieu of a super chat to continue to show his support. And thank you, as always, Buster. That's Peter Laycock in the chat room. I don't know if he's in there, but let's see who is. Eugene Ildago joins us from New Jersey and says hello. And there's also Sean Skinner and David Graham. Also joining us, we have Eddie Casanova and John Lewis. John, you know, I think he's our only viewer in Brazil. Lovely to have him here. John and Buster, they're one of the contributors that were with us back in the early days of the very first Threadripper build that we did. Their names are right on the front of that machine. And if you don't believe me, tune in on Monday's Members Only show. I will broadcast for nostalgia over at Studio A. And I'll bring out Threadripper because that was our streaming machine. And guess what? It's still the streaming machine. I have to throw some updates on it. It's been off for a little while. And get the cameras charged up and get the keyboard and mouse charged up. And I'll do all that later today. Get it all moved out into the kitchen area. And we're going to go old school tomorrow. That video is only available for members. It will only be available for members forever. So that is a gift, a reward, a benefit of supporting us here that enables us to do that sort of thing. So we thank each and every one of you, and we hope that you can join us on Monday and revisit Threadripper and just have a taste of nostalgia for being back in the kitchen at Studio A again. Andy W6AD joins us, says happy mini palooza. Of course, Maralina, our channel administrator, says hello and is hanging out in their chat room. She creates the thumbnails from scratch. She titles and does the video descriptions. She does all the research for the links, and she addresses all of your emails that come in, along with setting up potential reviews from companies. We get a lot of companies asking us to review their socks. What? Their iPhone chargers. What? So she handles all that nonsense too. But she filters it out for the companies that actually, offer products that are more aligned with our content here. Michael Lavelle joins us and says hello, along with Brian Weber and Arnold Elbert. Elijah 52 Dickens and Sahazanid, I don't know how to say that one, says hello. Welcome in. There's Michael Bellinger saying hello to everyone. Michigan is going to be hot this week, he says. Yeah, well, I think your definition of hot and mine are a little different, but you do have humidity there. Ben Laird joins us from Scotland and says hello, right along with Lana Dro and R.W. Roblu, who says hello. Dustin Fuller and Mad Turian watching us. Mad Turian says he's watching from North Dakota today. David Graham and Paul Vercher saying hello. J.D. Bousquet says hello, along with Jim Kenny. Andy mentions that he had reached out to AOOSTAR's support because he bought their eGPU dock, I think during Amazon Prime. I think he got a good deal on it or something. And he said he had to ask them some questions, AOOSTAR. And they had fast responses with accurate information. Yeah, same with me. It's consistent. They didn't treat me special or anything like that. They don't know who I am. They might now, but even then, I'm not so sure. Where was I? Michael Lavelle says hello, along with Brian Woodley and Charles Eslick. Mr. B508 says hello. Mark Baggett's joining us, along with Stephen DeToit. He says, hi, Carey, hope you're well. Thank you for your knowledge. I enjoy your videos. I got my computer 5 years ago, and I decided I will install legal software only. It's better that way. I learned the hard way. Yeah, a lot of times people will spend a lot of money trying not to spend money. It's like going in debt because you want to look like you're rich, and that's what's keeping you poor. That's basically software piracy. These days, software usually has trial periods and even freeware alternatives that it's just an old school thing that you could understand back in the day, but today it doesn't really make any sense why anybody would do that. But to each their own. I mean, if they want to buy a car and then drive it into a telephone pole, I mean, it's theirs, so let them do what they want. I think after they get that out of their system and after they're on their third or fourth car, probably won't want to do that anymore. So sometimes you got to just let people go their own way and let them figure it out on their own. Some people figure it out sooner than others. So I'm glad to hear you got there. Things will be a lot smoother from here on out. Let me tell you, dealing with that pirated software is a nightmare. Frank Jimmy says hello, joining us. Says it was just pouring rain an hour ago, but it's sunny and 82 degrees Fahrenheit. Typical of Florida, he says. Bike Man says hello. And Jonathan Fells. Kratazeus joins us, and Crazy Vera. All right, well, welcome in, everyone. I hope you're having a great Sunday. And I guess I need to get this back out of the box. So this does have 24 gigs of DDR5 that's soldered onto the board. That's 2 banks of 12, essentially. 12 gigs. You can't upgrade the RAM, but those days are over. The computer technology and software has been changed over the years that much RAM really isn't necessary for the vast majority of computer owners. Now, if you're an enthusiast and you're running some intense resource-heavy things, or maybe you're running, I don't know, 3D printing, slicer applications or architecture, I don't know why you'd be buying a computer like this anyway. That's foolish. It's absurd. It's like you want to race bicycles and what you bought was a big wheel. What are you doing? Well, I don't have enough money to afford a Schwinn. Yeah, well, I don't think a tricycle is a bicycle, It's probably cheaper and slower and not as reliable, very limited in its capabilities. and now you want to use it for mountain bike racing. Like, what are you thinking? What's wrong? But, you know, if that's their form of entertainment, have fun with your little game. But if you're serious about needing a lot of computing power, then you should buy a computer that has a lot of computing power. And if you say you can't afford a computer that has a lot of power, then you can't afford to do the mountain bike racing if you can't afford the bike. You can't be reasonably logical and think you can get away with something that the rest of us are just too stupid to understand. What you're doing is you're spending less, you're getting less, and you're limiting yourself. And then that leads to complaints, and it leads to complete misunderstandings and abuse that follows the computer because it's being misused. And then they blame the computer. I've seen this so many times. So for what they're selling here, 24 gigs of RAM, you're good for the life of this computer. If that's not good enough for you, it's not the computer's fault. The computer is not going to outgrow you. You, however, could outgrow the computer. Most people do not outgrow their computers. Most people also don't watch YouTube. So I'm not saying that you guys are like most people, and I should be preaching to the choir. You should already know what I'm telling you. You should already be agreeing with it because it's not debatable. It's factual and scientifically proven that in this industry, you get what you pay for, and you can't turn a nickel into a dollar. It's just, you can't just wave around and, hey, I'm going to use this nickel instead of a dollar and fool everybody. It's not a dollar. It'll never be a dollar. It will always be a nickel. All right, and then you got people that want to be smart alecky and say, well, I could invest it. Da, 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 da. I'm not going down that little game. So that little nonsense. But basically, all I'm trying to get at is this is a really good machine for the price. And I think you'd be hard-pressed to find one equivalent or better than this at even the same price, let alone a cheaper one. Consider that a challenge because, quite frankly, if you can find a machine similar or better to this, that is similar or better on the price, please don't keep that a secret. I would love to know about it. Because if I love this at this price, imagine how much more I would love something identical or better at the same or cheaper price. That's all I'm saying. Of course I want to know about it. AOOSTAR isn't paying me to make this video. I'm giving you solid advice here coming from real world experience. I'm not a faceless YouTube channel that has an AI narrator showing pictures on the screen. This is me. This is the device in my hands. I'm telling you from real world experience. I have this in my hands, and there's no backroom deal being made. I am free to say whatever's on my mind about this, positive or negative. I bought this. AOOSTAR has no say in it. Lose my voice. AOOSTAR has no say. No consequences will fall my way if I want to be negative about it. However, I would never intentionally buy a computer that I assumed was negative unless, you know, once in a while, see, I can't really afford to do it. I want to buy it to show you why you shouldn't buy it. Okay? But that's a rare thing for me. I don't really have the money that I can afford that. What am I supposed to do with it? I can't sell it to my clients. You know, I'm basically stuck with it. So we've done that on occasion where we said, here's why you don't want to buy AliExpress or something from AliExpress, or here are the conditions you should expect, or certain manufacturers on Amazon. We said, you know, I can't recommend them because there's no website, there's no support, there's no warranty. Even though it says there is, we reach out to their support never answers us. We reach out to their sales never answers us, and we reach out to the parent company and they don't answer us. That's disgraceful, childish, amateurish, and scammy as all get out. And I'm going to call it out as scammy and make sure you know about it. Now, if you want to buy after I tell you it's scammy, I'm not telling you not to. Just know you're buying from a scammy company. And when I see a product that I would genuinely recommend, it's the same. I'm going to tell you, here's what I like about it. You don't have to agree with me, but I can justify it. I can show you on camera, and I can prove that I'm not exaggerating. And it's inarguable because there's evidence of a live, unscripted, unrehearsed, unedited video showing how fast it boots, how it's responsive, what kind of noise it makes, if it makes any noise. It's all real. Good luck finding that anywhere else online. Good luck. Somebody's paying for it. In our case, our audience pays for it. The days where Amazon influencers were making really good money, that's gone. That's all done now. So if you want a fun time, just go on YouTube and search for influencers going broke. There's a lot of videos that are exposing these content creators that are in tears and I can't pay my rent, da 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 da. And they're basically begging for money. What we do here is very different from that. What we're doing is we're asking for the community to support us here so we don't have to get a corporation behind us that pays us to review their products in the way that they want us to review them. And if we don't do it the way they want, they pull their funding. Well, then this whole concept isn't possible unless you're independently wealthy and you're willing to sacrifice your time and your money to just make videos for free online with no benefit whatsoever. So unless there's another type of way to do this that I'm not aware of, please let me know. Again, I don't want people to wonder, when I tell you I like this, was he paid by AOOSTAR? Is there something going on in the background that we're not knowing? Usually there is for most content on YouTube, and they're not by law required to disclose that. And you'd have a hard time proving it even if they lied about it. You'd have to get into their accounts. You'd have to see where the payments are coming from. You can kind of tell we're not rich here. We don't have fancy studio. We don't have a crew. It's just me and, of course, Mara doing a lot of the administrative work. And in order for me to produce a lot of content, I need to go live. If I were to edit and polish these videos, you'd get one video a week, and my eyes would be all sideways because I have to keep watching myself repeat the same things over and over. Every time I edit, I have to play it back. Does it look right? Does it sound right? Does the transition form correctly? Play it back again, modify it again, play it back again, and then those 4 seconds are done, and just 2 hours and 59 more minutes of editing to go. I'm not doing it. There are people that enjoy editing. I am not one of them. So I would rather go live with mistakes and warts and everything else that goes on when we're live and keep it real, and then produce 4 videos a week that are 3 hours apiece rather than one video that's 30 minutes. I just don't want to spend that much time on a 30-minute video. You're talking about, 30, 40 hours of work. So that's the way I'm doing it differently from other content creators. And you guys probably already know that. But for anybody new here, that's just a different business model that I think makes the most sense for somebody like me, where I can stay on top of the technology and the latest and greatest introductions of hardware and new mini PC models, new routers, anything like that that comes out. We can be the first because we don't have to do all that nonsense. But if you want to watch a commercial, that's pretty much all the other tech channels on YouTube. Not all of them, but most of them are just fancy commercials. And I'm Generation X. We fast forward past commercials. The irony is YouTube will show you ads before the commercials play. The world's getting crazy. It's like that movie Idiocracy, but it's real. All right. Let's see. I need power. I need HDMI. Now, I should have benchmark results on this. I usually run the benchmarks after the show and then save the results. I need an Ethernet cable. Now, this does have 2 Ethernet ports on the back of it, so if you wanted to run it as a soft router, something like OpenSense or something, you could do that. It's kind of overpowered for that purpose, but, some people just do things because they can. And then I got my keyboard, my mouse. I need the Cloverleaf power cable here, which is right down here. Ooh. I never made those sounds when I was younger, bending over like that, but At least I'm on the right side of the grass. All right, let's power this bad boy up. Oh, I got to use the button on top. When you see a button on top, that is usually also a fingerprint reader, just so you know, so you can use passkeys. Something wants you to log in, you just tap, just like your phone, same as your phone. Let's go over to this output, take a look at it here. I got to scroll down here in OBS and find it. There it is. So right now you see the Elgato, no signal. In just a moment, that should do the power on self-test. There it goes. And this is real-time boot. All right, this has been off for what, about a month? Been sitting in a box? And usually if a machine's been off for a little while, it might take a little bit longer for the post to happen. Normally, as long as the computer's plugged into power, you don't have to worry about it. But when you've unplugged it from the wall and it has been unplugged for a while, that's the hardest drain on the CMOS battery that will kill the battery within 2 years instead of 6 years. And that's pretty much standard operational procedure for all computers these days. So looking here at the desktop, let me go full screen over here for me. Here we go. Our Cinebench results are right here. And what we're looking at on Cinebench R23 is the CPU multi-core score of 11,264 and the single core at 14, what's that say, 68. So we're sitting just below, well, that's on the single core. I should have grabbed the where the orange line is on the multi-core to see how it compares. If we go over here to the right, you look at our maximum temps. This did hit 91 degrees Celsius right there on core 5. That's highlighted. That's why I highlighted it. That's perfectly acceptable as a momentary temp that it hit during the stress test. And I think if you were to look for benchmark results overall just for the CPU, this AMD, again, I got to get my other glasses to read this. Mara says we've got an email. All right, let me get my other glasses here. So if you look at Cinebench benchmarks for an AMD Pro 6850H, it should be within a few percentage points, positive or negative, of that master number up there that we got, regardless of who makes it, regardless if it's a laptop. They all basically perform the same as I previously mentioned. And then if we go back, let's close this out. And we'll go to Crystal Dismark. We put our own NVMe drive in there. And so the NVMe drive we put in there, I believe was a, if I'm remembering correctly, it's a Beijing S880, 2 terabyte, Gen 4x4. And you can see we're getting Gen 4x4 speeds, 7102 on the read sequential, 6639 on the write sequential. So that's really, really good. But you could put a cheaper NVMe drive in there if you want to. When it comes to the networking, a lot of people want to know who make the network cards because they want to run Linux or something that may not have support for certain drivers. So this is all Intel. It's really nice that everything is Intel on this. Even though it's an AMD-based machine, it has 2 Intel i226V LAN adapters and a Wi-Fi 6 AX200 from Intel, which is also the Bluetooth. People will like that because Intel's a big name brand and you can get the drivers directly from Intel if you want to. They might have newer ones than AOOSTAR, or even you could use the download the Windows driver assistant. A lot of people don't realize, like if we go to the AMD Adrenalin software, you know to update that, right? You just double click on that and in a few seconds, I mean, it's kind of a big application. It takes a minute to open. There it is. And even though it says up to date, sometimes they lie. So you have to audit it. You have to check it. So I hit manage updates. Now it's actually checking for real. And then it says, oh, look, there's a new version here. Over here, it said it was up to date. Now it says there's a new version when we force the check. And it says automatically keep AMD software update, but it didn't, did it? Now, granted, I haven't had it on very long, so we may not have given it a chance. But all I have to do, right here where it says updates, I'm just going to download that new chip, that new Adrenalin software. And it's pretty small. It doesn't take very long to install this. And this will drastically improve the performance of your AMD CPU and GPU and make you more reliable and more secure. And it's all free if you know enough to go and check yourself. Most people don't know enough. They assume that whatever they've got is right. They have no idea. They never even think about it until there's a problem. So when they report a problem to me, one of the first things I do is I start looking for out-of-date software because the customers don't know the difference. If you're watching my channel, you know the difference. And if you choose to ignore it, it's your choice. You can't claim. You can choose to wait until there's a problem and be reactive, or you can choose to grab the free software and take a few minutes when you feel like it and be proactive to prevent the problems from occurring. So while that's installing, let me check the email, see what we got here. It says, oh, Robert Barnes sends an Amazon gift card. Whoops, I just lost my screen. There it is. He says, I am Mr. B508 in the chat. I've been a member for 42 months. Wow, this is super nice. Here's my gift to help with more excellent, timely, honest, informative content with real-world applications, and thanks for all you do with us. And it's a very generous Amazon gift card. Thank you so much. Wow. Thank you. And I must say that, you know, it's that kind of generosity from our community that that's what's powering us here. I still haven't bought a Tesla. I still haven't got my vacation house in Cancun. Just in case you're wondering where the money's going, you will see it here on the screen. All right, so that updated. So what I was going to tell you here, when it comes to these updates, we can go to the Intel driver assistant. Hold on a second, my keyboard isn't working. How about now? There we go. Intel driver assistant. Because you don't have to have an Intel CPU. You just need to have any Intel components, like in this case we have. And you have to allow this. Normally I always block anytime this comes up, but for this software to work, you have to allow it access to investigate what hardware is on your computer and then what the driver versions are. And then this prerequisite also has Windows updates afterwards, or you might find some applications that require it won't work properly without those updates. So it might be easier for you to just go and look for the updates by hand, or if you'd rather, this is an option that will keep the Intel wireless and wired network adapters current with their drivers. So what I'm going to do is install this very quickly. It's just basically a browser add-on, sort of. And the other thing it does is it performs a CPU-Z-like inventory of your system without having to open it up. So remember, we are on an AMD system here. I can't emphasize that enough because some people think those two worlds are two separate worlds when sometimes they're combined, as I'm about to demonstrate live on camera. And as you see, it says there are updates for our Wi-Fi drivers, and these are important updates. It really helps. If you've ever had any issues with your Wi-Fi, it's usually driver related. We're going to go ahead and download that. But what I'm saying about CPU-Z is, look, it tells us the make and model of the computer. It tells us the BIOS version. It tells us our processor, even if it's AMD, it gives us all the details about it. Look at this. Our graphics, all the details about it. Remember I mentioned I couldn't remember the storage? There it is, Beijing S880 2 terabyte. More details about it. So even if you only use the software for this, it handles it right in the browser, so you don't have to worry about like updates to CPU-Z. And then the 24 gig should show that it's, well, it doesn't show what kind of memory it is, which CPU-Z will show, but it shows how much you're actually using. And I mean, I need to make a video about people on the internet not understanding what memory does, because there is a gross amount of misinformation that having more memory is better. And that's not true anymore. It's simply not true unless you have a specific software application that's poorly written. That's it. And if you want to insist on using those poorly written software apps, or it's some, you know, really complex application like, you know, Blender, AutoCAD, something like that. What the heck are you thinking using a machine like this caliber to do work of that caliber? What are you thinking? Of course it's not going to run as good. It's going to run, don't get me wrong, but it's not going to run as quickly because that software is extraordinarily resource intensive and it's very expensive. Well, Blender's free. If you can spend the time to learn how to use Blender, oh man, I admire you. It's one of those things like Linux. If you want to spend the time and figure it all out on your own, you could certainly see a lot of value in that. But for the rest of us that just want to get something done, you know, I'm going to turn on the radio and listen to music. I'm not living in the days of Bach and Beethoven where I have to create my own music and therefore invest in a piano and learn how to play it. Otherwise, I go without music. Right? To each their own. So that's it. That was the only driver we had waiting for us. And this will stay loaded down here in the system tray. And it'll get a little red dot on it to let you know if there's any more updates. Over here, we've got a little yellow triangle on Windows Security. What does that want? It says we haven't done a scan in a while. Watch how fast the scan takes place on this. I mean, it's not the 90-minute scans of the early 2000s. Everything with computers, what happened here? Everything with computers has gotten so much better. Sometimes that will happen if, for example, I haven't gone to Windows Update yet. So what you need to understand is nothing broke here. What likely happened is that Windows Update is running in the background, and one of those updates was for the antivirus, and it just coincidentally happened while we were running the scan. So if I scan it now, those updates are probably done. And we'll do it one more time. And I want you to see how fast this scans this hard drive and how different things have become. But the old school mentality, people latch onto that because of their ego. They're just being obtuse. And they're allowed to be obtuse. It's not illegal. And you're allowed to ignore their nonsense. Don't believe what they're telling you unless you want to go back in time. Or you're working on a computer that's 20 plus years old, then they're being accurate. But other than that, it's important to make sure that the information you're getting from online was published recently. Sometimes the viewers are watching old content and they have no idea. They don't realize every video has a date and a year on it. Every single video you watch, and people don't pay attention. So they watch a video that's 10 years old and they think it was just published yesterday because that's the day they found it. But watch this. Let's go to Windows Update just to see if I'm testing a theory here that there are updates happening behind the scenes. Last check 34 days ago. So that was the last time. That would have been when we reviewed this initially. And you can bet your bottom dollar that there's been updates in the last 34 days. Just watch. Some of those updates are going to come through with a higher priority, such as antivirus. Other updates will come in automatically when the computer is typically not being used. You know, if the computer is sitting idle, it's trying not to interrupt what you're doing. It's done with purpose and intention. Again, this isn't the way things used to be. So trying to get people educated and caught up, boy, it can be like herding cats. You know, trying to gather a bunch of cats together is it's a lot different than sheep. And sometimes people will defend their ignorance. They'll argue with you to defend how ignorant they are. And I would advise you don't waste any time with those people. They're just sad. Let them stay sad alone. You don't need to be part of their sadness. That is the internet, especially social media today. There's a lot of sad people. Now, while that's running, let me bring back camera one and let's grab, let me grab a corner of this and drag it down here. We'll keep an eye on both things happening. That preview update's pretty big. What I want to tell you about the preview updates, something else that's changed. You know, back in the day, we used to have Service Pack 1, Service Pack 2. Remember those days? These days, we get like Windows 24H2, 25H2. Well, 21H2 through 24H2 were these big downloads, very similar to service packs under a different name. But since 25H2, Well, a couple things have changed. Microsoft used to release 2 big updates a year, one in the spring, one in the fall. And they found that they couldn't keep up with repairing everything that needed to be polished on the first update before breaking a bunch of other features on the second update when they still haven't fixed all the broken features on the first update. So they said, okay, we're only going to do this once a year now. We're too aggressive. Things are getting too complicated. That's just how companies adapt to the changes the way consumers should if they're smart. So the company says, okay, we're only going to do 1 big update per year, and then we have the rest of the year to polish. We don't just, put everything in one basket and send it off and hope for the best. That was a very stupid way to do things. And they realized it. It took them a couple of years, but they said, why are we just taking this beating? What are we doing? And finally, management realized that they were being ignorant. So they said, okay, there's a smarter way to do this. Yeah, not everything Microsoft does is stupid, despite what you hear on the internet, and ignoring the fact that it's the most common operating system on the planet. Nothing is more popular, so that's why it's so terrible, right? So, yeah, you see that popular restaurant with the lines? Nobody goes there anymore. Yeah, okay. Anyway, so what Microsoft started to do is they started to build in the next version of the Windows updates, or the next version of Windows rather, into the previous version's updates. So for about the last half of the year of 2025, all of those updates you were getting contained the next version of Windows within them, little pieces. So that in the fall, when going from 24H2 to 25H2, as long as you kept up with your updates, all 25H2 was something Microsoft calls an enablement package. What the hell is an enablement package? What it does is it activates all of those updates you've been downloading as part of your regular updates. It activates all of them all at the same time, but it doesn't have to download and install them. First of all, you've been downloading them and installing them, and you just don't know that. As long as you're keeping up with your Windows updates, all it's doing is flipping the switch on. So it's a little tiny, your 24 to 25H2 upgrade. As long as you're keeping up, it's just a switch that gets flipped. It's over like that. You install it and it's done. Well, guess what's going to happen on 26H2? Right now, if you're keeping up with your Windows updates, then you already have parts of 26H2. And in the fall, there will be an enablement package that will come in automatically like any other update, and it'll install real quick. And it'll say, now your Windows version is 26H2. It's like magic. However, if you're running 24H2 and you're not been keeping up with your updates, and now 26H2 comes out, now that's a 6.5 gig download. See the difference? So I think Microsoft finally got some intelligent people in charge, at least as far as Windows updates go. And so the current process right now with Microsoft and a lot of other companies is to say, okay, look, we understand this RAM and SSD shortage is really causing harm to most of our customers. We can't fix that, right? Microsoft doesn't make RAM and they don't make storage, but what Microsoft can do is they can start reducing some of the resource load on Windows so that you don't need to have as much memory to get that responsiveness. Windows 11 on 8 gigs of RAM, it runs fine. Granted, some things take a little bit longer, like Windows updates, but those usually happen in the background. You'll never know anyway, unless you do it manually and stare at it. But for everyday computing tasks, the average user can't tell the difference between 8 gigs and 128 gigs of RAM. It's something people get obsessed over their RAM usage, which is nonsense. For the vast majority of people, it's just poisoning their minds. It's irrelevant information. It has no impact on the computer at all. When you have RAM that isn't being used, it's the same as not having it. So if somebody's doing everything they can to get their resources down, and they say, oh, look, now, my RAM usage was at 80%, and I made all these modifications that are likely going to have consequences, but they're just too ignorant to know. In the future, they're going to have consequences. I can almost guarantee it. And then they're going to blame Microsoft because they'll never accept responsibility for their own actions. That is social media. Just know that that's common. I'm not saying everybody does it, but it is in mass online. And they're just living in their own little world. The king's new clothes, the emperor's new clothes. That's all this is. So, you know the fable, right? You Google it. It's just people telling themselves lies and then expecting other people to believe them. And quite often people do. So let's say you're using 80% of your RAM. And let's say you believe this absurdist, complete lack of how technology works because you think this person knows what they're talking about. They have just taught you everything wrong. And now if you're going to go on and teach other people, you're part of the problem. A computer that has 20% of RAM free, not in use, and a computer that has 90% of the RAM not in use run exactly the same. There is no difference. Zero. It makes no actual difference. If you're not using it, you might as well not have it. It's the same. If I have $1 million in the bank and I won't spend it, it's the same as not having it. How is that different from somebody who doesn't have $1 million in the bank? It's exactly the same. There's no point of having something if you're not ever going to use it. So people spending all this money for RAM and wanting to upgrade and all this other stuff, back in the day, it was a different story. How RAM was utilized. And the virtual RAM on mechanical drives was so slow. These days, with fast NVMe drives, combined with optimized software, is Windows, Microsoft is optimizing Windows now, which is long overdue, so it will appear to be faster without, this idea of upgrading RAM so your computer goes faster is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. There are circumstances where that is the case, but they're rare. Most common users are believing this and spending hard-earned money on something they're never going to use. Then they pat themselves on the back and there's a placebo. They think everything's running better. It's the most bizarre nonsense that it makes me want to give up on my industry, but it only happens online. If you work in corporate America, this is not the behavior of IT training in corporate America. In IT, in professional IT, they already know all this. And they're not the ones making the videos on social media. A couple, but they're not the big guys. The big guys with 1 million plus subscribers, they're all entertainers. That's all they are. Every single one of them, with zero exception, are entertainers. Now, I take it back. There might be one or two. I'm trying to think if there's any actual real working technicians. They would be self-employed, not necessarily working in a corporate environment. So working in a corporate environment, you don't change thermal paste. You don't put in liquid coolers. You don't overclock computer. This is all enthusiast stuff, which is fine as long as you know the difference. In my experience, people don't know the difference and they're confused. They say, well, why did this person say this? Are they wrong? Well, they're right with their advice if you're an enthusiast and that interests you. But they're wrong if you're a professional, because that will get you fired. Or at the very least, maybe hold you back from promotion or a raise because you learned everything online, and you don't do that in corporate America. People running versions of LTSC of Windows, extraordinarily foolish. You know, they can play with matches too. I think that's foolish. They can run around and play in traffic if they want to. I also think it's foolish. None of that is acceptable behavior. It's not professional, and it's very irresponsible. But what's absurd about it is how the people that do that think they're outsmarting everybody. It is absurdity at its best. So if you want to torture yourself, I'm not telling you not to, okay? That's your business. But I really don't think a lot of people who choose that path understand that they are voluntarily torturing themselves. They will eventually figure it out. In the meantime, when they're boasting about how smart they are because they went to an LT, a long-term service contract of Windows, what they're really saying is, I don't know enough about computers to know the difference. And so everything that they're going to be missing out on that would normally be provided by an IT department in a corporation, which is the only place LTSC is sold for, They don't have an IT department. They don't understand what's missing. And so ignorance is bliss until something happens. And then they wonder why this Microsoft operating system sucks. Because they made bad decisions. Over and over and over in social media. It's the same story over and over and over. And very rarely do they ever accept responsibility for their choices. It's always somebody else's fault. Be aware of that when you're reading and watching social media. When you start noticing the patterns, you'll never be able to unsee it. One of my favorite examples of this is there's an arrow on the FedEx logo. If you ever see a FedEx box or a FedEx truck on the road, you see the word FedEx. Do you see the arrow between what is it, between the D? I think it's between the D and the, oh no, I can't picture it in my head. Once I show this to you, if you've not noticed it, you'll never be able to unsee it. Let's see, let's go over here. We'll type in FedEx logo. Oh, it's between the E and the X. So let me bring this up. Right here, between the bottom of the E and the indent of that X, do you see an arrow pointing to the right? Now, every time you see the FedEx logo on a box or a truck, you will always see this arrow. But it's always been there. And that's the problem with social media. Things that have always been there that people are just, they're not seeing it, they're ignorant. They don't know what they don't know. And if you realize what I'm pointing out is happening constantly, then you will always see it. And you'll be able to recognize it, and then you'll understand the value of the information much, much better with regards to accuracy or nonsense or entertainment. There's nothing wrong with nonsense in entertainment as long as you're enjoying it. But if you're believing it to be real, that's where the problem comes in. All right, let me get back over to the chat room while we're waiting for that update here and see what you guys are saying. Oh, I was also saying that, oh, Mark Gaines says I have email. I was also trying to point out that Microsoft's endeavor into improving the performance of Windows 11 is called K2. Not sure why, I could probably Google it. But K2 is not a single update. You've been receiving pieces of K2 as long as you're getting your regular updates every month. It is not a single one thing. It is multiple incremental improvements made over time with a mission of trying to optimize Windows to make it run faster, remove what people are mistakenly calling bloat, which is not bloat. People, again, we've got younger kids, they don't know what these words mean, and they don't know Norton antivirus and pre-installs. They're too young. And so if they see a link to a website, they think it's bloat. That's, again, we're talking about just a lack of proper education. And then that leads on to other people who know less than them, who then also repeat what they say. And before you know it, people are referring to anything they don't want as bloat. That's not what the word bloat means. Look it up. Okay. All right. Let me take a look here at my email. Ah, there we go. Yeah, Mark Gaines sends a PayPal contribution of $37.95. He says, this is my contribution for tonight's show. I was replacing the AC blower motor, the AC blower motor on my car. I'll rewind later and watch what I missed. Boy, that sucks, changing the blower motors out. It's tight work, usually. It's tight spaces and dusty and dirty. And better you than me, but at least you know if you do it yourself, it'll get done right, and you'll save money. Sweet 70021 says hello. Welcome in, Sweet. It looks like Sweet's been a member over 2 years, but I have no idea who they are. Let's see what conversations you guys are having here. What does H2 stand for? So when we talk about, like, the current version of Windows is 25H2. 25 represents the last 2 digits of the year. We're in 2025. Okay? The first half of the year, from January through the end of May, would be considered the first half of the year, H1. The second half of the year would be considered H2. Because the update comes out, like 26H2, will come out in 2026 in the second half of 2026. Does that clear that up for you? Why is there no H1? Well, I already explained that. Microsoft used to release 2 updates a year, one in the spring and one in the fall. And to repeat myself, they could not keep up with fixing and polishing the previous updates before the next big update came out in the fall. And it was really kind of creating a snowball effect. So they decided to no longer update in the spring. But there used to be, I think, 22H1 and then 22H2. And that's why they stopped. So there you go. Appreciate the question. It's a fair question. Andy says, I don't think business folks get their computer info from YouTube. Let's hope not. Let's hope not. Mark Leibowitz says, and he works as a real tech, he says, depends on the business. In a larger business, an executive who gets disinformation from YouTube has an IT department. The head of the IT department will set them right. In a mom and pop shop, it falls to guys like Carey. Well, yeah, a lot of my clients are small businesses. They're real estate agents. They're doctors and dentists. They're not major corporations. You know, they're lawyers, for example. How many employees do you think your average lawyer's office has? Not talking the giant, large legal organizations, those large corporations like Goldberg and Osborne or whatever. By the way, I had a meeting with Goldberg and Osborne because they wanted to put cameras into an inspection station, which is essentially like a garage that they bring in at cars that were in accidents for forensic review and evaluation. And they wanted a quote from my company on setting up cameras that they could look at, record everything and look at online. And this was in the early 2000s. And this was a pretty intensive quote. Like I charged them a lot of money because I have to drive over to their corporate office where they have this garage, if you will. It's built into the corporate office. You wouldn't even know it was there. And they have a hydraulic lift. I mean, I can't even imagine what they invested in this. And so I put together the quote for the cameras, which at that time were a lot more expensive than they are today. And bandwidth was not what we have today. And I think it was probably somewhere between $7,000 to $12,000, which for a company like Goldberg and Osborne is probably less than what they're paying for rent in that building. And I sent them a quote, and I sent them a bill for that quote. And they paid the bill. They asked some follow-up questions, and that was that. I didn't twist their arm. I honestly didn't really want to do the work, to be, I would have done it, but setting up cameras, I mean, they probably should have gone to a security company, and maybe that's what they ended up doing. But at that time, we didn't have all these cheap cameras and wireless and fast internet and stuff like that. So it was a kind of a big ask. And you'd think to a company like them, $12,000 is nothing. And I don't remember the exact amount. That's probably on the high end. But even on the low end at $7,000, it's nothing. And they paid it, and then it was fine, and never heard from them again, and I'm fine with that too. My clients instead are primarily, the owner of the company, along with a few employees, upwards of 20 employees at the most. Anything bigger than that, you really need to hire a bigger company than me, because I'm just one guy, In the early days, in the 90s and in the early 2000s, it wasn't uncommon for there to be somebody in the office, one of the employees, who just happened to enjoy computers as a hobby, and that person would become the de facto computer person. And they would make all the decisions, and as the company would grow, they would get in over their heads, and then that's when I would get the call. And then I'd say, oh, this is wrong, and this is wrong, and they should have been done it. Well, they didn't know any better, and they were too cheap to hire somebody. Let Bob in accounting do it. He has a computer at home. He knows what he's doing. And to some extent, in this example, Bob did know what he was doing until he didn't anymore. And as the company grew, it exceeded two things. Bob's time, he was spending way too much time doing computer work and not enough time doing his job that he was hired to do. And then when he was done doing it, things still didn't work. At some point you go, no offense, Bob, but you do what you do and let's bring somebody else in now. So companies will often limp along like that, thinking it's just this one problem, and it just gets worse and worse. And once it finally reaches its breaking point is when I get the call. And once they go to me, that's it. Bob is no longer allowed to touch the equipment. Apart from turning it off and back on again or checking the cables, that's it. Anything else, they need to call me. They can't be doing changes to the system, to the network or the configuration of the computers without telling me. Otherwise, when they call me with a future problem, after they made changes secretively, how am I supposed to know? So it's in the contract. You will not be making any of these changes. These changes will all be done by me or with my approval. And that if you do it anyway, then that is not part of our contract, and that will be billed separately to correct those secretive things that you've hidden from me. And it's just there to save them money. It's there to save me time. It's there to keep them up and running as long as possible. It's not evil. It's not a money grab. There's got to be some incentive to get them to cooperate, period. And if you've got a rogue employee that's just continuing to make modifications, and I tell the boss, hey, you know, Bob did it again. He modified something, and I have, you know, that's why you can't print. It's because of Bob. Bob doesn't work there anymore. Not because of one time, but because Bob just couldn't help himself and just kept doing it. And the boss kept having to pay me separately from the contract to keep fixing what Bob was doing. Now there's no more Bob. Bob can go take his job somewhere else. And now the company is up and running much more reliably. They don't have the printing problems anymore, or in some cases, malware and viruses and infections. That one employee was the source of all their headaches. And despite of how good that employee might have been at their job, the fact that they couldn't leave their hands off the equipment and they were told at least twice to stop it, and they still did it anyway, didn't stop them from acting like, what did I do? You know damn well what you did. You were warned and you can't help yourself. You're going to have to pack it up and go. Because Bob doesn't realize his help was costing the company a lot of lost productivity, because when Bob screwed it up, nobody else could work. Nobody else could print. The whole system was shut down because of Bob's selfishness and Bob's stubbornness. That's not a team player. That's not what his job description was. And he won't stay in his lane. They tried to correct him again, tried to correct him again, and said, we're done. Take your things. We'll walk you out of the building. Imagine how I feel. Let's say you're driving in the car and somebody's telling you how to drive. Do I need to take that any further? It's not much different. But if you're a paid driver and it's your car and you are paid to get something or somebody somewhere, that's what they're paying you to do. So to tell you how to do it, it's like, you know what, just get out. Go get your own car if you want to drive it. And especially if they're not paying you and you're just, you know, driving a family member or friend and they're complaining about it. You know what? I don't need you in my car. You are optional. You can get out and walk if you want. I don't care. You can go get another car. Go hire another Uber or hire. I don't care. Same with computer repair. Same with a doctor. Same with a mechanic. David Graham said, I'm sharing a fix. Microsoft changed power and sleep settings, causing some computers to hibernate when the screen sleeps for an extended period. Oh, see, I don't deal with any of that, David. I use my optimizer tool, does all that for you. So that's part of the optimizer. It's been part of the Windows 10 optimizer. It's still part of Windows 11. And when did that Windows 10 optimizer come out? 6, 7 years ago. So we've talked about this because before I did the optimizer, I was explaining this when I was doing it by hand, every single build. And I know you've been watching me for a while, so you not remember? There's nothing wrong with a reminder though. You know, the hibernation settings, as I've explained, they're for saving batteries if your computer doesn't have a battery. I'm not aware that Microsoft Update is changing it. It's usually the AMD Adrenalin software. Are the systems you're talking about AMD's? Because it likes to change the performance profile, or the power profile from balanced into performance. And all you have to do is switch it back to balanced again. I don't know if it did it on this one. I mean, we can look and see, since this is AMD and we just did the AMD driver, Adrenalin driver update. Let's take a quick look. Again, anytime there's big updates, it's super easy to just run my optimizer again and just audit it, you know, once a year or whatever. But if we go over here, and by the way, Hibernate not working isn't a Windows Update problem. When Hibernate doesn't work, it's typically a video driver issue. So just so you know where to point the blame, but it's so common with video drivers causing hibernation issues that people often blame Microsoft for it. And I just tell people you don't even need it anyway, unless it's a laptop. And obviously the laptop video drivers are designed to work with hibernation from the manufacturer of the laptop. But let's jump over here real quick and let's type edit power plan. And let's see where it's at. So you can see that in this case, it did not make any changes. And then, because I'm not 100% certain that it's Adrenalin, but what we're going to do is we're going to allow this to finish these updates. And maybe it's part of the preview update, or maybe it's something else. But I've seen what you're talking about, but I don't see it on every machine. But just to verify, because the preview update's pretty new, if the preview update or one of these other updates, which I can't imagine it would be, are changing the power profile, then after this installs and we reboot, we're going to look again. And what David's mentioning with the command prompt line of the power CFG -H off, again, we were doing that years ago. And I don't do it anymore because my optimizer does it for me. But you could run that command whether you need to or not. Once it's off and you want to turn it off again, it doesn't make any difference. So you can't hurt anything if that's what you want to do. Or you can simply you know, go into your power settings like I just did and look. Well, the reason I was turning that off was also because you have a hibernation file that will match the amount of RAM. So if you have 64 gigs of RAM installed and you have not turned off hibernation, you have a hidden system file, hiber something.sys. The size of that file will be the amount of RAM. So if you have 64 gigs of RAM, you have a hiberfill.sys file that is 64 gigs in size. That's taking up valuable SSD space. So primarily, the reason I'm turning it off is not just because it's pointless if you don't have batteries and can often be the cause of a support call because it doesn't wake up right. It also frees up however much RAM you've got in your storage space on your storage drive. So just FYI, it's a little bit more to it than just things not waking up right. But in almost all cases, nearly 100% of the time, any problems with the hibernation not working correctly is your video driver, just so you know. And you know, feel free to use Gemini or you know, an AI chatbot if you want a more thorough explanation of that. And I would encourage you, you know, if what I say sounds skeptical to you, double check me. It's all free. It's just type it on a keyboard, and then you can hear from an unbiased AI bot if you'd prefer. All right, here we go. We're going to do our first reboot with these updates. Now this preview update is pretty significant, and it will require the machine to reboot about twice before we get to the desktop. So you definitely don't want to do this when you're in a hurry. Transvat says hello. And remember, just because something's happening to you doesn't mean anybody else is experiencing it. I see this a lot online. You know, everybody's got this problem. Well, no, you're having a problem and you Googled it and you found a little tiny group of loud people also expressing their frustration online and falsely came to the conclusion that that was a large group of people. No, that's a problem that's been around since hibernation was invented. It's never changed. It's always been such a problem. That's why I disable it, and that's why it's part of the optimizer. I'm just tired of the support calls. It's always the same solution, which is just turn off hibernation. So as a preventive measure, I turn it off and been turning it off on every single build for years. That way, you know, again, if I get one customer calling me with that problem, it's one too many. It's an avoidable problem. Knowledge is power. But yeah, that's a video driver problem. Most times. But again, you know, Google it. Use your chatbot. It'll explain it. Much better than I am. I'm just cutting to the quick here. Why do you think Microsoft's supporting Windows 10 for the next year ahead, Carey? Well, Microsoft isn't real clear on why they're doing it, and we discussed this on the previous video, but I'm happy to discuss it again. Telling people that you have to upgrade to Windows 11. What did people say last year? I can't afford a new computer. When RAM and SSDs were cheap, people said they couldn't afford a new computer. So many people said so that Microsoft said, we'll give you another year. But Microsoft did not know, and again, this is my theory, is that the prices of RAM and SSDs would make computers 2 to 3 times more money than they were. So if you couldn't afford a cheap computer a year ago, you can't afford a more expensive computer this year. So I think the executives at Microsoft said, oh boy, there's going to be some real serious lashback that we're in on this whole RAM and SSD thing, right? That we're now forcing people to upgrade at the worst possible time. It would be good press for us to go ahead and extend everybody 1 more year. And guess what? If the RAM and SSD prices stay the same and they're this expensive, don't be surprised for Microsoft to do the same thing again. I mean, Microsoft's coming out with the updates anyway. And essentially, you're only getting basic updates. You won't get any features. You won't get any new benefits. You're just going to be running the same old operating system. And it's going to not age well, I promise you. There's going to be things that just don't work anymore, and too bad. But as far as security goes, you at least can be secure. And I believe it's a very logical, even though I could be wrong, I believe it's a very logical response to the RAM and SSD shortage. You wouldn't want to do that to people. Mark Leibowitz said, I think it's more to give holdout computers another year or two to fail, leaving the holdouts with little choice but to buy a new computer. Well, it's another theory. I mean, who knows? It's only a matter of time, right? But again, I think the people who are holding out were doing so for financial reasons last year. And things have gotten a lot worse financially, at least for those of us in America. Groceries have gone up in price. Everything's going up in price. Jobs are getting harder and harder to find. Companies are laying people off. Economically, America is not in a very good spot right now. And if America was in a better economic spot last year and people said they couldn't afford it then, they definitely cannot afford it now. It's common sense, right? Whether or not that's Microsoft's justification, they're not saying. So I can just speculate. And if I was Microsoft, that's what I would be thinking. For whatever that's worth. Arnold Albert said he uses hibernation on his desktop because he could quickly continue from where he left off. Look, if it works for you, I mean, enjoy it. The bottom line is it's kind of a waste of time. Quite frankly, if you just leave your computer on and have it turn your monitor off after a certain amount of time, the amount of power a modern computer takes while it's idling is less than the light in your room. So unless you live somewhere where electricity is really, really expensive, you may actually be spending more money in electricity for the power up process. It consumes quite a bit more power momentarily to bring it on back line, and it's all psychological placebo to think that you're saving anything. But if that keeps you happy, even if it is a placebo and it's not real, I don't want to spoil your happiness. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm not worried about when things work, all right? I don't worry about whether or not somebody believes in something. Believe whatever you want. I don't care. I'm here to solve problems. So if you don't have any problems, I don't know what sort of response you want from me. Good, good for you. I don't know. All right, let's go check our power settings and see if anything's changed. See if hibernation mode has come on here. We're going to go to power. What is it? Edit? Power plant. There it is. My brain blanked out. Yeah, nothing's changing. So there is no Windows update that's causing this. I do believe it is the AMD Adrenalin software, but again, we'd have to be able to replicate it. Just because something happened to you once doesn't mean it's a problem. It could have been an inadvertent click that you made that you didn't realize. You could have installed a piece of software that did that, but we cannot replicate your scenario. However, I did personally experience that on a machine the other day that was an AMD machine, and I noticed it after I updated Adrenalin. But I didn't go back and research it. So if it's not a replicatable problem, it's not a problem. It's just a fluke. Now, when we talk about the optimizer, let me grab my flash drive and let me show you. Once again, I want to put my money where my mouth is here, and we'll bring over Uncle Carey's Windows 11 optimizer and even the Windows 10 optimizer. They both do the same thing. When we bring that up, one of the things it wants to do is turn off your hibernation file, unless it determines you're on a laptop. It does this all automatically. This is thanks to the excellent programming of our friend Nick at D7X Tech. I couldn't write this. You see right here, what it says right here, disable hibernation. And you notice how it's tied to the power plant. So what this is doing is it's determining if you have a laptop, if you have a battery, and it's adjusting this based on your computer on default settings that you can override at any time. These are my recommended settings as a computer technician, okay? If I'm a professional chef and I'm sharing with you my recipe and you want to adjust that recipe, feel free. I don't care. But if you want to make it the way the professional chef makes it, then you leave everything the default way. So all of these little boxes, these little switches that are green, we can turn these off. I like having this computer icon there. It's not there by default. If you don't want that, you just click that, it goes away. Well, you change your mind, just click it, it comes right back. There it is down here. So Nick has done an amazing job with this. And what I do when you see me install Windows fresh and clean, I just hit Optimize All. And then I can verify my Windows is activated, my TPM is installed, my Secure Boot is on, my BitLocker is off. I can check System Restore status, because it's not for me to decide by default if it should be on or off. That's for you to decide. But by clicking once on that, it'll take you right to the System Restore settings. You don't have to go monkeying around trying to find them. And then if you look over on the left side, it tells us what version of Windows we have, the build number, the SID if you're having networking problems because you cloned a bunch of operating systems and you didn't understand what an SID was and now things don't network right. The answer could be right in front of your face with this piece of software. But if you never clone, this is kind of irrelevant. But in my case, I will come in to clean up somebody else's mess and they're not being fully honest with me, or I don't have any communication with the previous person. And then if they're having networking issues, it's like, well, let me check the SID, and then that's a whole command line. Here, the optimizer brings all this useful information up that I need as a professional tech. This tool was never designed initially. The Windows 10 optimizer was never designed for you. It was designed for me. When I showed it online, viewers said, can we buy that? It never even occurred to me to sell it. So when we did Windows 11, we knew we're going to sell this. People are going to want this.
But we're putting in the features I want for me to run my business, not for what a home user wants. You guys can do your own. And this runs on every single computer, whether I built it myself, if it's coming in for repair, if it's a brand new review, every single computer, laptop, desktop, mini PC, this runs on. No exceptions. I have a consistency in my business that makes support a lot easier. One, it avoids unnecessary support calls that are a waste of my time. And two, if I was doing this all by hand, I would forget, did I turn off the hibernation? It's a big long list, to do it all by. Everything my optimizer does, you can do by hand. You can do everything I do, but that optimizer is doing yourself. But what the optimizer does in 45 seconds, it'll take you probably 10 to 15 minutes, assuming you even can remember whether or not did I turn that on or off? You know what I'm saying? That's what I was doing. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way to work than this. So, yeah, it's been there for a reason. And it's those damn video drivers, man, every time. And especially the older the video card is, because the manufacturers stop updating the drivers, right? So then some Windows update comes out. Your video card is old. It's not getting updated drivers anymore. And then what do? You blame Microsoft. Of course you do. Of course you do. I would expect nothing less of the general public. But there you go. David Graham said he updated video drivers. Yeah, you updated video drivers, but they didn't include updates to the older cards. So in other words, they might still apply to older cards, but there's nothing new for those older cards. Again, David, if you really want to be more educated on this, I strongly recommend you use an AI chatbot that can explain it, break it down for you. I'm not making it up. I'm not anti-video card. I'm telling you from experience. I've worked on thousands and thousands of computers. This is an old problem. It's been around forever. Apparently, this is new to you. Welcome to the club. And if you want to catch up and learn more about it, that's on you. But otherwise, you just let it go. All I can tell you. Mikeman says, I am surprised my mom's old 2012 HP desktop still runs, considering how old it is. Kept telling her to start saving money. Windows 10 support eventually going to end. Tried to talk her into a mini PC, no luck. Yeah, that's typical. That's typical end user logic, right? Why would I throw this away when it works perfectly well? When your mom's identity gets stolen, she'll have a different attitude, okay? Or when the computer breaks. We'll see which one happens first. It's the same thing over and over and over. There's nothing unique here. This is all very, very typical end consumer behavior, and you should expect it. In the political world, it's called a NIMBY. Stands for not in my backyard. People don't care about anything unless it affects them personally. Then they're passionate. Then they're like, we got to do something about this. There was a traffic light that needed to be installed at a dangerous intersection. And the city council, they said, oh, we can't possibly afford to put a traffic light there. Yeah, but look at all the accidents that are happening. This needs a traffic light. Well, we just don't have the financial means to put a traffic light in. And again, you can Google this. The mayor's daughter gets killed in a car accident at an intersection, and a traffic light went up in the next 2 months. That's called a NIMBY, not in my backyard. They don't care until it happens to them. That is common, stereotypical, and the single most common attitude you will get from most consumers, and it should be expected. Or you're in for a world of disappointment over and over and over again. You're gonna have unrealistic expectations of human behavior when it's very common human behavior, unfortunately, and that's just the way people are. Again, when you got a business to run and there's money at stake, it's a different attitude. If it's a home user that thinks of this like a toaster, you're not going to do anything. You just wait. Give it time. It'll solve itself. Andy says the only thing he changes on the optimizer is the power plan. I run all my minis on high performance. Yeah, well, there you go. Right? That's why it's adaptable. for those reasons, so you can choose what's right for you. Yeah, when we designed it, we didn't say it's my way or the highway. We said it's my way by default, but we have to give the end users options, should they choose those. I love having options. David Graham said he ran the optimizer. Well, if you ran the optimizer and the optimizer verified hibernation was off, then why did you turn hibernation off if it was already off? That doesn't make any sense, David. Brian Weber says, my dad would have a mini PC now, but he's stuck in his ways. He faxes his bank once a year, and he wants a fax modem. The bank accepts email now, but he won't change. Well, as long as the bank will accommodate that and enable him, then he has no reason to change. When the enablement stops, your father will be forced. So, that's just the way of things. Again, it's just very common stereotypical human behavior. The older people get, the more intolerant they become, the less adaptable. In general, this is how it's always worked. This is the way I'm going to do it. But as long as the other party agrees to that, they have no reason to stop. So when the bank says, we're not taking your faxes anymore, we don't have a fax number anymore, what's your father's plan? And again, he's a NIMBY. He doesn't have a plan. It never even occurs to him. And when it happens, he'll be surprised by it, and he'll ask, what do I do now, when you've been telling him for years what to do? Okay, that is part of this job. You will encounter this over and over and over and over and over, so long as you're dealing with end users, and some small business owners can be that way. But small business owners usually pick up on it faster because it affects their income. And they say, oh my gosh, seems like we're being less productive with the computers than we were without them. That's when you know the problem is the owner, that they're still insisting on doing things a very difficult way, very time-consuming way, rather than taking advantage of what they have. And they have to be tutored. They have to go through an educative process to demonstrate the proper use of the computer so that it can be profitable. And then once you demonstrate to them, their attitude changes and they're not so resistant. They're much more open-armed, welcome. Please tell me more. Make me some more money. That's something they hear. And so you don't try and do it all overnight. You give them one demonstration, you show them. But they've got to have some motivation to want to learn. If somebody doesn't want to learn, you're wasting your time. And the more you try and force it, the further into the ground they're going to dig their heels. You had a better chance of convincing them by respecting them and saying, let me know if you change your mind. And what you did, if you kept insisting on it and you won't let it go, is now you've made it personal, and they're going to do everything they can to prove you wrong. Which, if it was difficult to train them before, it's a good way to ensure you're never going to have to train them, because you're going to get to a point where you won't even talk to each other anymore over something so stupid. Give them the respect to make their mistakes, and just offer to help should they choose to want take your help. Never force your help on anybody. They say, it's nice for you to offer, and when they say no thank you, you say, let me know if you change your mind. Drop it. I have got enough clients that I can tell you pushing it doesn't work. Pushing it makes it worse than it ever was. You think it's bad now, you go down that path, you're probably not going to work for that client anymore. Sometimes clients, in my line of work, you need to give them the space to make mistakes. And you need to let them know this is what I would do if I were you, and if they don't want to hear it, say, well, if you ever change your mind, you know, I'm always available, and just drop it. Until they bring it back up again, never mention it again. And then you'll likely have a happier customer. It's twisted, isn't it? But that's how it works, at least in my experience in this industry. It's very much a pattern of human behavior that some humans, not so much with the business owners every once in a while, but mostly home users. They just don't really understand it. They don't have an in-depth knowledge of it. Because if they did, you wouldn't be having this conversation. And if they're not interested, they're not interested. Move on. Change the subject. Talk about Love Island that was on TV the other. I don't know. And he says he loves the option the new optimizer gives us. Thanks, Andy. We're still working on adding some more to it. We're not done with it yet. Let's see. I want to sort these by name. And I want to go in this BIOS real quick because I notice I only have one Cinebench score here, which I wonder, does that mean this doesn't have any performance profiles in the BIOS? Let's find out. Hit restart. Once that word restarting disappears, I'll start pressing the delete key, but not like a maniac, just delete, 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 you know, like 1.5 times a second. And if delete is the right key, which I'm not sure it is, it will take us in the BIOS, which it just did, so it must have been the right key. Some computers it's F2 or escape, but most of the time it's delete, so that's my default. We're going to go over to advanced, and look, there is a power configuration. But yeah, it looks like I did not complete the Cinebench testing in the different modes. And I would never choose quiet mode because you're just going to run the CPU at lower power. That means your score is going to be lower on Cinebench, your overall performance will be lower, and your fans will be quieter. On these AOOSTARs, I've been finding performance mode runs exactly the same 91 degrees, but the fans aren't getting loud on the other models. There was one exception. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's change that to performance, save and exit, save and reset, and then we'll bring up, I guess I'm going to have to copy over Cinebench in my hardware info application again and run it. And then we can compare balance to performance mode as far as temps and score. The fan is very quiet on this. Like even now, I can barely hear it. Oh, now I hear it. It just briefly cranked up and it's quite noticeable. Oh, it's still there. That might get annoying for some people. Okay, now it's quieting down. So whatever it was doing at startup caused a lot of resource usage, and it wasn't doing that before when it was on balanced mode. So that may be enough reason to keep it off of performance mode. Some people are more sensitive to that than others, and there's a lot of variables from, you know, personal tolerance to that sound. Also the room it's in, right? A smaller room with hard floors and, you know, no carpet, it probably is going to echo off the walls, which might drive somebody crazy. So let's grab under PC testing software, let's grab our hardware info, and let's grab Cinebench R23. Let's drag that over. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename the Cinebench file here. Rename it. There it is. You think I'd be, I know it was up here by now. Cinebench R23 balance. So we know that was in balance mode. And let's bring up hardware info so we can monitor our temps right now. Start that up. Just want the sensors. Close this, let's close this. Look for our temps, they're already expanded. Okay, this is where we're at right now. We're in the mid 40s, which is a little warm. And we'll watch these high temps as we run the benchmark. Start this up. This is a big app. It takes a second to load. There it goes. Hit start. And while that starts, I can close that window out because I'm done with it. Definitely hearing the fan now because we are putting this under a heavy load. And we've already hit higher temperatures. But is it worth it? Is it worth it to torture your CPU and degrade it faster? Well, if you plan on keeping this for 10 or 12 years, it's probably not worth it. Not only do you have the added noise, but the added sped up degradation of the silicon because you're running it so hard. But on the other hand, if you plan on replacing it in a few years, you'll replace it before any degradation would have any impact. The fan noise is extraordinary. I never noticed any fan noise on this before. And if I turn off the noise filter on my microphone, let's do that right now. You take my microphone off. I'm going to place the microphone near the meeting. With the filter off, now you can hear all the environment around you. Basically, depending on what Cinebench is doing, the CPU fan will run quieter or louder, depending on the task. When that task has been completed, then the fan will adapt. So it shouldn't be loud like this all the time unless you're really pushing something hard on it all the time, in which case you bought too low of an end computer for the work you're doing. You bought a little tiny economy car and now you want to tow a yacht with it. It's preposterous and absurd for anybody to think that that was a smart thing to do. But again, with consumers, they just see the money, right? Why should I buy the big towing pickup truck when this little tiny Camaro can pull it with a 6-cylinder engine? I wouldn't want to be the next owner of that Camaro. You're using it in a way it was never designed for, and you're putting wear and tear on the engine that it wasn't built to do. It's yours. You can do with it what you want, but you probably just diminished any sort of value of it. Katie Bousquet said he had a client who swore they could get better prices elsewhere, so when the contract renewal happened, they shopped around. They ended up calling me 2 months later and asking if we could work out a new deal. Yeah, I encourage my customers to shop around if they want to. I never say, you're never going to find anybody better. I never say that. Because they will dig their heels in to prove you wrong, and they'll pay more and never talk to you again. So just say, yeah, I think it's a good idea for you to shop around. And if you decide you want to come back or you want to renew, my phone's always open whenever you're ready. It's been a pleasure working with you. It's nothing personal. I understand you're trying to find a better deal. Who isn't? Fact of the matter is, you know, the old expression, if you love something, set it free, and if it comes back to you, it's yours to keep, right? Well, those customers that, you know, they think that maybe you're ripping them off, I mean, personally, that's insulting to me. But what I'll say is Lee Iacocca, who was in charge of Chrysler, who invented the minivan, would famously say on their commercials, if you can find a better car, buy it. That's kind of in your face. I just say, look, I understand you want to look around. I understand everybody wants to save money. I get it. But I don't take it personally, and I tell them that. It's just business. If you change your mind, keep my number. I'm always happy to come back. Just leave it at that. This idea of like, oh, you're not going to find anybody cheaper. You're not going to find anybody faster. You're not going to find anybody better. Don't do that. Because they will prove you wrong, even if it means they're spending more for a worse tech. They would rather lie in their own mess than admit you were right. Don't put people in that position. You're not going to like the outcome of it. Be graceful. Bottom line is, if a customer does that and they come back, they will likely never do that ever again. They will now appreciate you and have gratitude for you that they never would have had any other way. They have now resolved any doubt in their mind, and you're good to go from that point forward. And if they never come back again, good riddance to them. You don't want customers like that. So it's a win-win for you as a tech either way. At least that's the way I see it. From the years of experience I've got in this industry, I've made those mistakes, and I can tell you from real life experience what works. And I always try and find solutions that benefit everybody. So AOOSTAR has been very inconsistent in their performance modes. We've seen them where their performance modes really don't make much difference in the fan noise, but do make a difference in the score. Here, it's making a significant difference in fan noise. It's significant, and the temps are also higher. So I would not run this in performance mode, but it'll be interesting by sacrificing the fan noise and degrading that CPU harder. What's the benefit of that? 3% better in score, 4%? Versus how much louder is it? 30% louder? And how much are we shortening the life of this machine if we continue to use it like that? Are we shortening it by half of its ordinary lifespan? I mean, that would take time to figure out. But, working on a scale of averages, I just think that you underbought a computer. If that's that important to you, you should have spent more money. But that's just my opinion. W. Holmes says, I aspire to be as level-headed and even-keeled as you, Carey. I am getting there. Well, it didn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of practice to be the person you want to be. And especially in the beginning, falling back into old habits, I get so mad at myself for taking the bait or responding the way that I responded, because I knew better and I wasn't thinking in the moment. So it wasn't like I was born this way. I have adapted through practice and practice and practice. And even now, sometimes I react to things very poorly and I get mad at myself. But I'm happy to say it doesn't happen nearly as often as it used to. It's just like anything else. The more you practice it, you've got to allow yourself the freedom to make mistakes and, drop the ball. But get back up, dust yourself off, say, okay, I'm not going to do that again. And if you do it again, for me, I'm my own worst enemy. I'll punish myself. Damn it, Carey, why'd you do that? Why'd you say that? You should have said this. You knew better. Remember this for next time. Let this sting. Let it be a scar to remind me. And over time, you just create new habits. That's all. It's up to you. You got to put the work in. But don't expect to just flip a switch and you're going to be different. It doesn't work like that. It's years and years of just reevaluating, getting angry at myself, saying, okay, if this ever happens again, I won't do it that way. It eventually, it's not perfect. I still slip up, but nowhere near as often as I used to. And I'm pretty proud of it. Much happier with the way I handle situations. It doesn't upset me like it used to. Much more accepting of it. Okay. With our audio filters off, this thing has gone completely silent. You could probably hear the difference, right? And our final score, let me get back over there. Let me get back over here. 12,858, and what was it before? $11,264. What percentage difference? 11,858 versus 12. What did I say it was? I've already forgotten. $11,264. So I got that wrong. 11,264 versus 12,858. I see what I did there. So from balance mode to performance mode, didn't give me the answer. $11,264 is what percent of, keep opening the wrong tab. $12,858. So it looks like I did it backwards, so it's about a 12% difference. So if I did it the other way around, I'm going to do everything backwards today. 12,858 versus 11,264. No, this isn't working right. It's definitely... Let me try. Percentage difference. Let's do value one is 11,264 and 12,858. It helps if I know how to use the computer. So it's saying it's a 14% difference. I like how it's showing the math. So 14% in the scope of things. It's with computers today. You're not getting a whole lot of difference here. It looks like a big number, like 1594 is the difference on the number. But if you calculate out overall, I'm trying to think of an example here where you have an abundance of something. Let's say you have a bowl of M&Ms. And in one bowl of M&Ms, there are 11,264 M&Ms. And the other bowl of M&Ms has 12,858 M&Ms. And they're otherwise the same. Same bowl, just a slightly, 14% more M&Ms. Whether or not you think it's worth it to pay the extra cost for that 14%, which in this case is our noise and our degradation, that's up to you. That's not for me to decide. But for me, it's not worth it. For me, 14% is insignificant. 50%, even 40%. I'd even say 25%, maybe, minimal. Let's go ahead and do our single core test. We'll grab a screenshot and then that'll wrap it up for today's video. We'll have the 2 screenshots of performance mode versus balance mode, and I'm not going to bother with the quiet mode because at that point you should have bought a lower end computer. If you wanted to handicap the computer to reduce noise, you could have saved money by just buying a cheaper, less powerful computer. Just the opposite of what I said about performance mode. That's why balance mode makes the most sense, and the engineers don't just make this stuff up. There's a lot of math and research and testing to verify exactly what the power limit should be on each of these modes and what the fan curve should be based on the temperatures that we're seeing. But we're paying a high price for that 14% at 93 degrees Celsius. That's going to take a toll. But, that's not for me to decide for you. You guys just understand the cost versus the risk versus the benefit and decide what's right for you. Now, this fan is still a lot quieter right now on the single core test, but I fully expect it's going to reach something where that fan's going to crank up here. And I'm just going to leave the microphone filter off so you can hear it, because you'll hear it. Andy mentions the computer is designed, as all computers are, for the fans to ramp up when necessary, just like the turbo on a car. Basically, the difference is whether or not that turbo's running constantly, or if you're getting it, like, let's say you want to pass somebody on the freeway, your turbo's going to kick in, right? Give you that boost. It may not be meant to be on all the time because you'll wear the turbo out sooner. You'll also burn through more gas. So there's a cost to it and there's a benefit to it. And it's really up to the driver to decide. The turbo's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. But if you find that you're using the turbo all the time, it sounds like you didn't buy a very powerful car. Some cars, they add twin turbos. You want to talk about some money and some burning up some gas. But if you want to get thrown back in your seat, that roller coaster ride comes at a price. So these fans are designed to ramp up temporarily. But some people will abuse the, I think it's abuse, where they slam on the computer where that fan is just constantly annoying. It's constantly working hard. And that's like always putting your foot to the floor every time you get behind the wheel. You're going to wear that engine out. You're going to wear your oil out. You're going to eat up gas mile. Your gas is going to be consumed. You're going to pay for that gas. You're going to pay for all that engine maintenance. And if that's worth it to you and you're willing to pay the money, have fun. And then you're probably going to need a new car in half the amount of time that most people need a new car, because you will have worn that one out just through what I would call abuse. There's no law against it. It's your money. You want to abuse things, abuse them. I grew up in a family where we didn't have much money. And if we got something and we broke it, we weren't getting another one. Wasn't born this way. When you have something that's very, very expensive or hard to acquire, you'll take care of it. Or you'll enjoy it for a short period of time and go the rest of your life without it. Same can be true in relationships. So, if something has value to you, you take care of it. If this has no value to you, just abuse the hell out of it. It makes no difference to me. I'm just here to educate and set expectations so you know, you understand before you start the cost versus the benefit. That's all. The fan's been relatively quiet on the single core test compared to that multi-core. But the reality is most people aren't using any applications in single core. It'd have to be pretty old, pretty outdated app. And many of the multi-core apps that people are using aren't really that hard on the CPU, except, as I mentioned, specialty applications or gaming. This does have an OCuLink, doesn't it? Does it have OCuLink on it? No, it has USB 4 though, so you could do OCuLink on this with USB 4. And if the game is written to be more CPU intensive, it's going to affect the fan here. And if the game is really to be more GPU intensive, you don't even know what noise is until you put a graphics card exposed in a GPU dock. It will drown out. It's so loud, it will drown this out. It won't even matter how much noise this is making anymore. But enjoy your game. Put some headphones on. Have fun. KD Bousquet says, I drive a V8 as my fun car, and it's $70 a day to fill it up. You go through a gallon of gas in a day? Right now, he says it's in the shop getting work done after a few too many drag races. Nobody buys Ferraris because they're a good deal. Nobody buys Ferraris because they're known for their reliability or their gas mileage. And if you can afford a Ferrari, it sounds silly to complain about reliability, gas mileage, or what was the other one? It's all about the fun. But the fun comes, that kind of fun comes at that kind of price. I can't afford that kind of fun. A day at Disneyland set me back $500. I'll never go into Disneyland ever again. For the amount of fun I got, waiting in lines for 90 minutes for a 30-second, 60-second ride, life's too short. And so is my money. I am never going back again. I could have had a lot more fun with that $500. Lesson learned. This isn't the same Disneyland of the 90s that I used to go to. Breaks my heart, but times have changed. It's weird to me that as a middle-aged adult, I can't afford Disneyland, but as a older teenager or in my young 20s, early 20s, I could much more easily afford Disneyland. That's how expensive Disneyland got. And I make a lot more money today than I did in my 20s, but I could afford Disneyland in my 20s. Yeah, I don't know. Things have changed. Normalizer says he's got a GMK Tech M7 with the 6850H CPU and 32 gigs of RAM, and what a great mini PC. Yeah, we've had, mostly we like the GMK Techs, mostly. The, am I confusing AOOSTAR and GMK Tech with that one machine I said they shouldn't sell? Because I did that before. Am I doing it again? GMK Tech had a M2 Pro S model that's 6 years old for sale on Amazon. It's not AOOSTAR. I screwed up again, and you just made me realize that I did that. But the other GMK Techs we like, just not that one because it's 6 years old. Being sold as, it is new, it's just 6 years old. Andy say the specs say this has OCuLink. Oh, it does, Andy. I didn't see it. It's on the side. I normally, I'm expecting the OCuLink port in the front or the back, and it's on top of that. Not only is it on the side. Let me go full screen on this. Thank you for pointing that out. Let's go to close-up camera. Right here where it says HDMI, I wish it said OCuLink. But there's a rubber cover. And if we, I don't know, get a fingernail underneath. There's the OCuLink. There it is. So you're right, it has I thought it had OCuLink, and I'm looking at the front of it, and I'm looking at the back of it, and I'm like, where the hell is it? It's right there. But this is the same color as the case. It just blends right in. And then it says HDMI. When the HDMI is back over here, and it says HD instead of HDMI. I think they just were advertising this as HDMI, but every computer has HDMI these days. That's kind of a pointless sticker in a bad location. But hey, look, if that's my biggest complaint, it's, you know, nothing. Andy says AOOSTAR is very progressive on offering OCuLink on many of their units, as is Minisforum. Yeah. Yeah, can't deny that. Just as soon as this is done, I think we'll wrap it up. So if you do have any questions for me, this is the time to ask. I'll do my best to provide answers or resources for you. While I'm waiting, there's a delay from when I talk to when you hear me, by the way. It's a good minute that I have to sit here waiting on a response. But in the meantime, I will eat up that time by saying thank you, of course, to all of our members. A shout out to Mr. B508, am I getting that right? Mark Gaines and Buster, thank you guys so much for your contributions. It's, I just want to verify I'm remembering the handle correctly on that. Yeah, Mr. B508. Thank you for the Amazon gift card. Thank you to Mark Gaines for the PayPal contribution. Thank you to Buster, as always, for the Amazon gift card prior to the show starting. I didn't see Buster in there today, so hopefully he's resting, and he'll be catching up with us later. And when you do, hi, Buster. Hope you're doing well, my friend. Of course, Mara, our channel administrator, doing all the work in the background. Thank you to her, as always. If you guys want to reach us, you want to send us emails, we're very easy to reach. I'm fully transparent. Like I said, we're not putting on a show here in the sense of entertainment and trickery. I'm not a magician. If you want to see how the real work is done and where my values are in the business to keep me in business all these years, I'm happy to share that with you. And if there's something I haven't talked about and you want to ask, right there, showcasecreate@gmail.com. And if you see any of the mini PCs that we've bought, and you're interested in purchasing them from us, as long as you're in the United States. We do sell them at a loss, but we are trying to recoup as much money as possible in order to use that money to buy another mini PC, and then we'll sell that one. You know, we try to minimize our losses. It wouldn't make any sense for you to buy it from us if you can just get it on Amazon for the same price. And we have to pay for shipping. Amazon, you know, they have a deal with the shippers. So what are we going to do? We can't compete with that. So we do our best to, basically it's a brand new unit that's been thoroughly tested. We'll take some money off of it. Otherwise it's like new. And if you're interested in that and making a reasonable offer, reach out to us. The worst we can say is no. Or you might ask if we have something else that fits a certain need that you have and a certain budget that you have. And I'm more than happy to look through our inventory and see if we've got anything to offer you that meets those requirements. But you'll never know if you don't ask. Also, if you want to share any personal experiences with us regarding any technology, whether it's good or it's bad, as long as it's your own personal experience, not somebody else's you're telling us, we only want to hear from your own personal experience. And we love that. We despise people telling us about other people's experiences. I'm not interested. But if those other people want to personally tell us about those experiences, that's welcomed as well. And that's how you, man, I'm just losing my voice today. That is how you will reach us. We love to hear from you, so don't think you're bothering us. Paul Connolly says, great stream again today. Thank you, Paul. Andy says, thank you, Carey and Mara, for another mini Palooza live stream. You got it, Andy. Well, thanks for being a part of this amazing community and being a supporter here. and encouraging me. This is shouldn't do that. Let me see how this is doing over here. Let me check on it. Still just finalizing. As soon as it's done drawing that picture, we'll have a score. So we just have a couple minutes left. Edward Bass says, Mark, Carey, great stream. Learned a lot. Thank you. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Edward. You too, my friend. Eugene Eldago said, are Greg Salazar's videos commercials? Greg is very good at what he does, but somebody has to pay for it. So you tell me. When Greg shows a diagnostic and a repair, and he is giving away not only his labor, but let's say somebody has a bad motherboard, and he says, oh, I've got a motherboard here, I'm going to give it to them. What does Greg say in his videos where that money comes from? You can answer your own question, because Greg is very transparent about it. I like that about Greg. He does a great work. He does great work in his diagnostics and his repairs, and he does a great service to the community, and he's very transparent about how that's getting paid for. Andy wants to know if I'll be wearing a retro shirt for Monday's show. No. No. Honestly, I didn't even think of that until you just said it. But no, I can't be bothered. Come on, I gotta move a bunch of equipment. I gotta update and recharge a bunch of batteries, update the computers, and then I gotta move it all. I gotta hook it all up. I've gotta set up the camera. I've gotta do all this work just so I can make a 2-hour video and then tear it all back down, put it all back into the other room in such a way that it's protected from the dust and everything else, and then it'll sit for God knows how long before we do it again. That's enough, okay? I have to do it all by myself. So, I know, bring out the violin. But it's been sitting a long time. In fact, I'll go over there after the show and start working on those updates and start moving equipment and start cabling things and start running some tests. That I imagine that's going to be 3 or 4 hours for me to just move it, plug it in, get it hooked up, get it updated. The updates need updates, video driver updates, operating system updates, yada, yada, yada. And then once all that's ready to go, then I can at least tomorrow, when I go into Studio A, have it set up and ready to go. And then when I'm done with the show, then I break it all down. And that should be a lot faster than setting it up. I mean, I'm going to have to wipe the dust off of some of this stuff. It's got to be just covered. So, welcome to the world of computer tech. Do you have your Windex and paper towels? But hopefully you'll join us. It'd be great to see you there, and we'll just hang out. I'm not planning to do any review tomorrow. I might have something over there that we can sort of put on the bench and say, hey, remember this? Or if you have any ideas or questions, you know. And a members only, as always. It's very informal, much more intimate. We'll just hang out. This sounds completely silent now. I don't know if you've noticed with the filters off, but we should have our scores ready. Yeah, so 1509. And I can't imagine that's really going to be any different. So I'll tell you what, let's grab a screenshot of this. Notice there, we're at 93 degrees on core 3 is a maximum temporary record-setting number there. And let's do, let's see, print screen. We'll go to paint. We'll edit, paste, file, save as, JPEG, and we'll take this one here and we'll just change the name on the end of it to performance. Okay, so now I've got that recorded for posterity. And previously on balanced mode, that score was 1468. And in performance mode, 1509, so like 41 points more. Not much. It's pretty insignificant. But I will say that and this says Windows 10. It's funny. I think that's just Cinebench being old. For me personally, I don't think it's worth it. So before I forget, let me restart, and I'm going to put that power mode back to the balanced setting, because that's exactly, I mean, the engineers nailed it. As far as I'm concerned, that's where I would leave it. And again, if I really needed more power, I should have bought a more powerful computer. Let's go to power configuration. We'll change that to balanced. And then save and exit that. There we go. All right. Easy peasy. Come back over here to camera 1. Sean Skinner says, thanks for the wonderful stream. You're the best. Thank you, Sean. Thanks for hanging out with us and being a member of our community. It's been great having everybody here. I enjoy this so much. You guys have no idea. So I appreciate you making it fun for me. Chris Johnson's just checking in, saying hello, and he'll be watching the stream later. Right on. Thank you, Chris. And I think that will wrap it up. I don't see any other questions, so I will take that we're all good. So thank you again for hanging out. Thank you for those super chats and other contributions. And of course, tomorrow, as I previously mentioned, the links for everything from the mini PC to the Windows and Office keys, they're all in the video description below the video. If you want to reach us, again, our email address was on the screen a few minutes ago. We're always happy to hear from you guys if you want to write in. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And we'll look forward to seeing the members from Studio A tomorrow afternoon, 1 o'clock as always. I'll see you then. Bye for now.